Happy Father's Day, or if you're not a dad, just Sunday. I'm Stephen Lewis, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Stephen Lewis on air. Radio was my thing, but I like the podcasting world, and I've always been a movie guy. So let's talk about The Flash on today's episode of Life as We Know It. Now, I saw this a couple of weeks ago, and I sat on it for a while because of embargoes and stuff like that. And I waited until this weekend because the critic screenings had a couple of different things that the general public got to see that we didn't at the time. And now it all kind of washes out. There will be some spoilers in this. So if you haven't seen it yet, just don't watch this video. Or perhaps you weren't going to watch the video anyway, or you don't mind being spoilered because you have no intention of seeing The Flash. So let's start with the fact that it was projected to make $60 million this weekend. It's not even going to do that. Actually, the projection, I think, was around 64. It started out even higher, where it was like 140 some odd million dollars. Not even going to come close to that. But again, nobody thought for a second that this was an Avengers level movie. And if you did, well, then you probably don't know your comic book movies. At the end of the day, The Flash is going to bow in with about $55 million, which is $10 million short of its lowest projection. So probably not successful, probably not going to merit a sequel. And the fact that Andy Muschietti, who's the guy who directed it, has been penned to helm the new Batman Brave and the Bold movie that they're going to do in a couple of years, you can pretty much guarantee that there's not a sequel to this. But Warner Brothers has kind of self-inflicted their own wounds over the years. First of all, they gave Zack Snyder complete control of all of those characters, and it didn't quite go as they planned. The reviews for Batman vs. Superman were less than favorable, which that went right into Justice League, and the Justice version, which is what Joss Whedon done, which was pretty much garbage. And then you had the Snyder Cut that they released on HBO Max, and I think that was more of a way to garner memberships for HBO Max than it was to really appease the Snyder fans. Now, what I will say Zack Snyder did really well was cast, for the most part. The cast that he put together, Affleck's a great Batman, Cavill's great as Superman, and Gal Gadot surprised everybody as Wonder Woman. But the problem that they have overall is they're rebooting this entire universe now because it failed at the end of the day. And a lot of those wounds were self-inflicted, but it doesn't change the fact that even there is the Snyder movement. Nobody went to see those movies, and they didn't make enough money at the box office. And when it comes to superheroes, Marvel has set the bar pretty high, despite the fact that Marvel is kind of trending downward right now. I have a feeling that will change faster. But The Flash has been around for 2+ years. It was announced, almost 6 years ago, maybe even longer, and it's just now coming to fruition. The other part of this problem is Ezra Miller, since he's been cast, is in and out of trouble. You can Google Ezra Miller and read the stories. They have their own share of problems, and I think a lot of people want to see Ezra Miller pay a real penalty for the things that he's done, and I can't blame anybody for thinking that way. The other problem with the Ezra Miller is I think he was cast wrong from day one. He's got more of a Wally West personality than a Barry Allen personality, and he was really annoying in both versions of the Justice League. But here we go with The Flash. This thing has been through a couple of different reshoots, reboots. The original version of this movie was supposed to eliminate Henry Cavill altogether and replace Affleck and Cavill with Michael Keaton and Sasha Calle. And that doesn't necessarily happen now. Then they said, no, wait. We're going to keep Keaton, Calle, and find a way to bring Affleck back as well as Henry Cavill and keep everybody. And then everything happened last year with James Gunn and Peter Safran being in charge of Warner Brothers, rebooting the entire thing. So now they're out as well. So what this movie is a version of Flashpoint, the comic. They follow the basic story of Flashpoint with some giant changes. In the comic book version, Aquaman and Wonder Woman are at war and going to destroy the planet. Their war is just so all-consuming. This time around, they bring General Zod back from Man of Steel, and he's going to be one to destroy the world. So, they made some subtle changes there. The Batman that the Flash encounters when he goes back in time is his father, Thomas Wayne. It's a cool version of Batman, and I believe they wanted Jeffrey Dean Morgan to play Thomas Wayne because he has the brief cameo as Thomas Wayne in the origin flashback in Batman vs. Superman. And this version of Batman is gun-toting and just an alcoholic and everything else, and super, super violent. Now, it also changes the Batman origin in the sense that because Bruce is the one to get killed in the alley, it drives his mother insane, and Martha becomes that universe's version of the Joker. So they didn't obviously do that. They went with him discovering Michael Keaton's version of Batman instead. One of the other big changes is Cyborg plays a huge role in the Flashpoint in the comic, but Ray Fisher's had a war with Warner Brothers, and at one point in time he was supposed to be in this movie, and after the war between him and Warner Brothers started, well, Cyborg was kind of axed from this, so they used a different version of Barry Allen, a younger version of Barry Allen instead. The basic gist, though, in an attempt to save his mom, Barry goes back in time and wrecks the universe. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about this movie. The biggest complaint that a lot of people have, and I 100% agree, the CGI is awful at times, and Warner Brothers is known for this. The CGI was so bad in Justice League with Henry Cavill's mustache that, you know, they'll just release it anyway, even if it's video game quality garbage. But this go round, you sat on this movie for, it's been done for 2, probably close to 3 years. You had plenty of time to get the CGI right, and I don't believe the director going, well, the CG was supposed to be like, nah. You just either lost money in the budget because it took so long, or for whatever a million reasons there were, you just didn't fix the CGI. So we start with the Flash after the events of the Snyderverse, and he does encounter, he has a better suit. I'm assuming that's thanks to Batman, because him and Bruce Wayne are pretty tight. So we open with the fact that the Flash is going to help Batman save Gotham. The cool thing about this is it's daylight, and we get Alfred, cameo from Jeremy Irons, who's Alfred I didn't mind. He is calling on Bruce Wayne, and you do get a little bit of Cavill because the first choice was Superman, but you see Cavill from the backside fighting off an erupting volcano. Wonder Woman is busy, so therefore Batman needs the Flash's help because there's a chemical agent that is going to be released in the middle of Gotham. And all this takes place downtown, which is really cool to see Affleck as Batman again. I think part of the shots are his stunt double, especially the close-up, because the face looks off a little bit. But then towards the end of this opening sequence, it's definitely Affleck in the Bat costume one more time. And a lot of this was fun. I think the cool Flash using his powers was cool, but the CGI on the babies, a lot of people are complaining because in order to save a baby, he puts it in a microwave, and they probably should have taken that out, but in reality, it all happened so fast. The baby's in the microwave for probably less than 4 seconds real time. Anyway, you don't put babies in microwaves, but the CGI was just awful. The babies looked bad, the dog looked bad. I mean, the effects around it were busy, but they were supposed to be, because he kind of, for him, when he runs fast, it slows down everything else so he can see it really well, but to the rest of us, it happens in the blink of an eye. And, you know, it was cool to see him save the day and do his thing, and then reunite with Batman, who in daylight tracks down these villains in pure Batman style on a motorcycle, which was kind of cool. It was good to see Affleck in action one more time. The costume had a blue tint to it, so it looked like the blue and gray version of the comic book. And then you see Gal Gadot show up, and they do the lasso of truth thing, which is, you know, it's an easy joke, but it's pretty much funny every time it happens, so I'll forgive it. But I do like the graphic between Barry and Bruce Wayne. And when he realizes that he's not going to be able to save his dad, the backstory of the Allens are Barry Allen's mom is murdered, and his dad is accused of the crime and cannot find anything to acquit him, therefore is in prison because of this. And Barry has devoted his life to finding his mom's killer and getting his dad out of prison. And he hopes that Bruce can help him, but unfortunately in this aspect, he's unable to fix a video good enough to help him. The problem is his dad's alibi is he's shopping in a grocery store, but the video surveillance never shows his face, and Bruce can't make that happen. So the appeal's going to get lost. His dad's going to stay in prison, and his mom is gone. The interesting thing about this too is this was supposed to kind of eliminate the Snyder Cut altogether, but Barry encounters Iris West, and that part of the Justice League movie was not in the Justice verse, it was in the Snyder Cut. So they do acknowledge that, therefore that makes the Snyder Cut more canon than Joss Whedon's version. Same thing with when Barry explains that he can go back in time to Bruce. He doesn't do that in the Joss Whedon version. It's the Snyder Cut that happens in. So the Joss Whedon version is done, and the Snyder Cut is, I guess, essentially canon for the most part. But you see some pretty good scenes between Affleck as Bruce Wayne and as Barry. And I do like Affleck in the Batman role. Like, he is really good as both Bruce Wayne and Batman. But despite Bruce's best advice, Barry decides that he's going to go back, and his mom is looking for a can of tomatoes to make spaghetti on Sunday, and she forgets it at the store, so she sends the father. Now, while the father is gone, someone breaks in the house, you never know who, and kills Barry's mom, stabs Barry's mom. Her dad comes back and gets caught for the crime. So Barry thinks if he can go back and put tomatoes in her cart, she won't have to send her dad back out to the grocery store. Her dad will be there when whoever breaks in, and everything will be fine. So he ends up doing this. And as he's starting to run back through time, he sees kind of memories of what's happening and what's changing. And he sees memories with his mom, and she's still alive. And he thinks he does it, and then all of a sudden he gets abruptly shoved out of his time run. And he lands in a different universe where his mom is in fact alive, and so is his 18-year-old self. So he ends up talking to his 18-year-old self and tries to convince his 18-year-old self that he has to get on a different path, because right now it's the day of his powers. If he doesn't get his powers today, then maybe Barry doesn't exist. So in the process of trying to get young Barry super speed, old Barry loses his own, and they start realizing at the same time that General Zod has landed on Earth and is going to destroy the Earth, and Barry quickly comes to the realization that he has no powers to help stop him. So he decides to look up the other members of the Justice League. Cyborg never had his accident, so he's still a high school or a college football star. He can't find anything on Wonder Woman, and he can't find, when he goes to look up Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman, Aquaman wasn't born. His dad's dog's name was Arthur. So they realize that they have to track down Superman because Clark Kent is somewhere in the world. And upon meeting Newberry's roommates, they do have some fun with this. They kind of play with the multiverse thing, where in this world Eric Stoltz is Marty McFly in Back to the Future, and that's kind of funny because there was a time where Eric Stoltz was going to be Marty McFly. They even filmed some of the movie, and they just didn't like the way it was, so they fired Eric Stoltz and cast Michael J. Fox. But in this world, Eric Stoltz ends up being Marty McFly. Kevin Bacon does not play in Footloose. Instead, he plays Maverick in Top Gun, and Michael J. Fox is Kevin Bacon's character in Footloose. So Barry realizes pretty quickly he's broken the universe. But in this universe, there is a Bruce Wayne, and they go to Wayne Manor, and it looks exactly like it did in 1989. The armory room was there the same way the kitchen shaped out when he went to the house. It's pretty cool and a nostalgic feel there. They encounter a grizzled old long-haired homeless looking Bruce Wayne who attacks them in the kitchen, and then he kind of explains where Superman was, and they use a really good analogy of how time works and with spaghetti, that you don't just go back in time and change one thing, you change everything, and time becomes like a bowl of spaghetti where some things inevitably intersect, but other things are permanently damaged and have to happen. So they realize they have to find Superman. Wayne reluctantly agrees, but they do get you get some cool stuff. They go into the Batcave, this stuff you've seen on TV, I'm sure, where they show the Batmobile and everything else, and the technology is still very dated. But old Bruce decides he's going to help them find Superman, who they think is being kept in a Russian prison. And this is kind of straight out of Flashpoint 2, except it's not a Russian prison. The government has kind of Superman held down and, kept out of the yellow sun to keep his powers away, and he's frail and everything else. So in this turn, they go to a Russian prison and they find Supergirl. They break her out. She helps them escape the Russian prison and decides that she's Kryptonian, but she does see what's going on with General Zod and offers to help them, including the fact that Barry needs to get his powers back. So they try to electrocute him, and it doesn't work, and it's her that kind of flies him up into the atmosphere and helps old Barry get his speed back. This is straight out of Flashpoint. He has to electrocute himself and recreate the problem that gave him his powers to begin with, and he almost kills himself in the comic book as well. So he gets his speed back, but they quickly realize that this Supergirl and this Batman are fated to die along with this world. And the more and more they go back in time, they're never going to be able to change that. And Barry realizes quickly that the thing that pushed him out of the time run originally was the young Barry, who kept trying and trying and trying and trying and got corrupted by the Speed Force and became the Dark Flash. It's all a little convoluted. It makes more sense when you see it on the screen. But old Barry realizes that in order for the rest of the universe to live, his mom has to die. So he goes back in time and takes the tomato sauce back out of the cart and puts it back on the shelf. But he does only make one change. He takes the brand of tomato from the bottom shelf and restacks it on the top shelf so that the footage will show his dad look up, and he does acquit his dad. And you think that he's back in his own universe until a different Batman steps out of the Mercedes at the end, and it's not Ben Affleck, it's George Clooney of all people. So that's the Flash in a nutshell. Again, CGI is not the greatest. In fact, I will argue it's terrible. Michael Keaton being back was cool. The nostalgia factor plays a little bit. I've never been a fan of that hard leather black batsuit. I think it looks it looked good in 1989. I can't say it still does, but it is fun to see Keaton back. I think the fighting that he does is it came across as being out of place. It was cool to see Batman do his thing, but it just did not, it didn't fit that version of Batman, I guess. And again, I'm a Keaton fan, so it was very cool in a lot of ways. Some of the lines, let's get nuts line is very forced, and the bats flying behind him while he says it is unnecessary. I would have liked to see this Keaton back, because they were originally going to make Keaton the new Batman going forward. He was going to be in the Batgirl movie that they scrapped for HBO Max. He had an appearance in Aquaman that comes out in December that is also scrapped, and he was going to kind of maybe do a Batman Beyond, which I still think has legs if they decided to do that. Cast Keaton as old Bruce Wayne and make it a different story that has nothing to do with the current universe. I think they should really still go that route, because I would have much rather seen Keaton in that route, or even make Keaton the grizzled old violent Thomas Wayne, because Keaton can play a pretty dark character. Pacific Heights, watch it, he's a good psychopath. But I don't think the Keaton stuff plays enough, and the majority of what you've seen on TV is what you get from Keaton in the movie, so you're not really seeing anything all that new. The other part of this is when he goes back in time to fix everything, you see all these worlds start to collide, and they give you a CGI version of the black and white Superman from the 50s and 60s. You get the Adam West CGI version, which I'm not sure why they use CGI, because it's just a still shot. They could have just used a shot of Adam West. You get that version of Batman. You also get the Flash, the Jay Garrick version, but it's Teddy Sears from the TV show, which is an interesting look at it. And you get to see Nicolas Cage fight a giant spider in a very plastic-looking Superman suit. This comes from the fact that Tim Burton was going to do a Superman in the late 90s with Nicolas Cage, and they wanted him to fight a spider. So this movie was never made, but that was part of the script, and it was kind of fun to see Nick Cage, CGI or not. A lot of people are cringing over the CGI Christopher Reeve and Helen Slater as Superman and Supergirl, but they were just kind of fun nods to the Warner Brothers DC universe as a whole, and they're blink and you miss them moments, but they are kind of cool. The overall story was fun. I mean, again, it adopts Flashpoint, but it's not a total adaptation, and it leaves this with Barry in a different world. You can do one of two things. You can create a sequel, which you're not going to do, or you can leave Barry there and start over, and you're probably just fine too, because you've excused him from the timeline, and with establishing Keaton, you've established that multiple people can be different characters. So overall, I gave this a B-. I think it was better than Ant-Man and the Wasp's Quantum Realm, or Quantumania, as far as comic book movies go, but I don't think it's anywhere close to Endgame or Dark Knight or some of the bigger comic book movies out there. And I think James Gunn and Peter Safran have a lot of work to do, because this part of the world, universe, is definitely damaged. And maybe the low box office is because of Ezra Miller. That's 100% understandable. I think he's good in this movie, but you sometimes can't separate the things people do in real life from what they do on the screen. Now, this movie was filmed before a lot of the stuff he did in real life happened, but it doesn't change the fact that it did happen. So we'll see. I've heard Aquaman is dismal, but that doesn't come out until December. So I think that, they've gotten to the point where they've made these movies, so they have to release them for whatever they can get and start over. But Warner Brothers right now and DC, for as powerful as those characters are, damaged goods. I hope Gunn's Superman holds up and who they cast. I think if you're going to do, I would implore James Gunn, not that he will listen to it, no one like me, but if you're making Batman Brave and the Bold with Andy Muschietti, who Ben Affleck is tight with, and you're using a grizzled old Batman where you've already established a Bat universe with multiple Robins, including Damian Wayne, who's the son, then I think you should do everything you can to bring Affleck back, because I think he plays that role perfectly. So, again, it's out there. It's going to make less money than it's supposed to this weekend. I don't know if it will even survive at #1 for 2 weeks in a row. It does have a lot of competition with Transformers and Spider-Man, both in theaters right now, so the superhero audience is definitely pulled in multiple directions. But the other problem that they have with this is the same thing they had with Shazam. This universe is going away, so people who want connected movies, you're not going to get it, and therefore, why invest your time in it, I guess, at the end of the day. So, B, that's what I give The Flash. I enjoyed it. I won't say it's the worst movie I've ever seen, because I would be lying. There are parts of it that I truly, truly liked, but I think it tries to get by on nostalgia, and that's just not enough to carry it. The Flash moves, just not fast enough, I guess. So, that's what I got. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Follow me on all the socials, and have yourself a fantastic day. Go spend time with people you like, love, or tolerate, because time is limited, so get out of here.